Thousands of women who weren't properly informed that they could claim their state pension, that the age that they could claim their state pension was due to change, should be paid compensation by the government with a bill that could climb into the billions. That's the recommendations of a report released by the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman. And I'm joined now by its Chief Executive Officer, Rebecca Hilsenrath. Really good to talk to you today, Rebecca. This clearly lays the blame at the Department for Work and Pensions door. Do you think anyone will be held to account for this?
I think it's critical that compensation is paid to the women affected. The reason why we have laid the report in Parliament, which is a unique thing for us to do without first making recommendations to the government body, is because we have been given to understand that the government don't accept that there has been maladministration in this case. And what we didn't want to do was make recommendations to the DWP and go into a long conversation with them in a debate which might have gone on for months and years and might have resulted in us eventually coming to Parliament. We've gone straight to Parliament, which we've never done before, because we think that in this particular case, given the nature of what has happened, the number of women impacted and the fact that time is running out, Parliament needs to look at this now and provide compensation that the women have asked for.
And how many women, just to recap, do you think are affected here?
Well, we're talking about millions of women. We're talking about all women who were born in the 1950s. These are the people who saw their pension age shift from 60 to 65. And what we found at an early stage in our investigation is that the government did not communicate clearly what was going to happen to them. Our latest report, which we have laid in Parliament today, has found that the impact of that maladministration left the women essentially financially disempowered, that they didn't have the autonomy to make informed decision making, which meant that they made some decisions differently than they would have had they known earlier that their state pension age was going to change.
The fact that you've laid this report in Parliament, what does it mean? What is the next stage?
Well, we're asking parliamentarians to look at our findings and take action. All MPs in this country have constituents who are impacted. We've been talking to them. We've been talking to the chairs of select committees, the chairs of all party parliamentary groups. And what we want Parliament to do is to look at our report and to ensure that a mechanism is set up to provide compensation for women who've been waiting for a very long time. And although it's a really big issue which affects millions of people, there's also something about understanding the individual stories. And by way of an example, we had somebody come to us who took early retirement aged 50 due to ill health, found out that they were 58, when they were 58, that their state pension age had changed. But we found that she should have found out when she was 54, and she had recovered her health by then. And what she said to us is that the decision that she made, or she was facing when she was 58, was very different. She'd been 8 years out of the market. Her CV was obviously quite dated. And it's about understanding what that difference in decision-making looked like for the women impacted.
And just reading between the lines, the fact that you haven't wanted to go back to DWP or the government, the fact that you've laid this down in Parliament, clearly a failure, you're saying, of the Department for Work and Pensions. Have they been obstructive in you putting this report together? I mean, clearly errors were made then. Are you concerned that errors are still being made now?
So the government, the DWP, completely cooperated with our report, with our investigation, and over the period of time that we have been working, they've provided us with the evidence that we asked for. That's not been the issue. Our concern is that they have clearly indicated to us they don't accept our findings. That means two things. It means that they won't move swiftly to implement a scheme for financial compensation. I'm afraid it also means that even if the Parliament does that, and provides compensation to the women, they won't get that apology from the DWP, which I think is about recognition, which I think is really important for the women. And it obviously also means we can't provide recommendations to the DWP to look at service improvement, which is a key part of what we do as an ombudsman.
Of course, the sums of money to individual women would vary. The sum of about £10,000 has been suggested. But of course, when you extrapolate that out and multiply it by the number of women involved, that is an enormous bill for the government. I mean, what would you say to those who will argue that the government just can't afford this?
That's correct. I mean, just on a point of detail, we haven't suggested £10,000. It is a lot of money, and it's important that Parliament weighs in the balance the different claims on the public purse, which we completely recognise. But equally, it's not really the case that finite public sums ought to dictate what women receive, given that this is compensation for a failure on the part of government. And just to think about the impacts on women, we're talking about people who can't necessarily afford to see as much of their family as they want, can't perhaps have a holiday or have leisure activities. In some instances, we've been told they're buying second-hand clothes and they're having to make difficult choices about buying food. So it's really important that Parliament looks at this in the round and doesn't just look at the other burdens on the public purse, but look at what these women are entitled to.
Rebecca Hilsenrath, the Parliamentary Health Service Ombudsman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.